If I said I was going to do something, I need to show up, no matter how I'm sort of feeling in that moment. Because most of the time, I'm happy with it, right? I did better than I was expecting. I didn't show up and act a fool. You know what I mean? It's because that was my anxiety speaking, my imposter syndrome speaking before. Obviously, there are much more catastrophic sort of mental issues that maybe just showing up isn't the right time, and that's okay too. And then lastly, don't make life harder than it needs to be. Don't think mentorship is this whole like overarching this king and their subjects. Like, it's not a huge thing. Just take it as it comes and be your best self.
Welcome to CyberSecurity Heroes, an IRONSCALES podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with security leaders and practitioners and other influential InfoSec stars, so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. CyberSecurity Heroes is brought to you by IRONSCALES, the most powerfully simple email security platform. And I'm your host, Brendan Rudd. And now, let's get into the show. Hey Samara, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Great. Happy Tuesday, I think it is.
Something like that. The days run together at this point.
InfoSec life, I guess.
100%. Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being here today. Today we're going to chat about mentorship. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. Before we dive into the episode, can you just kind of quickly share a little bit about you, your background, and what you're working on these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So Samara Williams, I'm currently the manager of threat operations at Cardinal Health, and I'm responsible for vulnerability management and threat intelligence. Way back when, it's not that long ago, but it is back then, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and I actually moved to Columbus, Ohio for a cybersecurity opportunity. Columbus, Ohio, I admit, is kind of random, flyover state and all that, but I love it here. Super underestimated city. So if you're ever my way, hit me up. Yeah, I came up in the threat intelligence realm, right? And I've expanded my horizons to vulnerability management. So now I'm happy chugging along, building a program, maturing a program. We do a lot from strategic intelligence with some of our BSOs and EIT partners to vulnerability intelligence, prioritizing trending vulnerabilities and backlog vulnerabilities, right? So yeah, I played basketball most of my life. So I love coffee and ice cream and dogs. So that's me.
You're giving some spoilers to my fun fact question. Give us one more so that I can fulfill my fun fact question.
Oh, you got it. I could give you like 5 of them. But anyway, my family and I traveled to Austin, Texas at one point in time to be contestants on Family Feud. That's one of my better fun facts. Yeah, it was awesome. And it was ridiculous how many people thought Steve Harvey would be there, by the way. I mean, there were cutouts everywhere, with him or whatever, but they actually put you through a mock Family Feud like game to see like what your energy level is and stuff. So naturally my family has a lot of energy, like kind of like me, right? And we got to that second round, but as soon as they put a camera in front of our faces, it all changed. The energy just died, right? I don't even think the camera was running. You know what I mean? But it was just the sight of, a camera or whatever. But so that was a lot of fun. We did not make it. I plan to try again.
So I'm sorry that you didn't make it, but I hope you won't get camera shy for our interview today.
Not at all. It was one of those it was like a huge production camera. Thankfully, I've been in front of those. So I think when I try again, I'll be able to accomplish it.
Yeah, they need to prep you with the iPhone camera first before you take the big leap.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yes, we said today's episode is going to be about mentorship. Maybe before we get into that, can you share your journey and how you got into cyber?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I moved across the US. There was a really cool opportunity in Columbus, Ohio to rotate through 7 different companies and work in their cybersecurity departments. So I matured very quickly. But as you can imagine, I needed some guidance through that. So there was actually a program that they had where you were partnered with a mentor, and he's still a mentor to this day. It was a fantastic partnership. Do I agree with forced partnership? No. But in this certain circumstance, it worked out really well. And he knew about the community. He knew people within it. So he really helped me and guided me through that program and the different rotations that I did, because it was all over the place. Incident response, vulnerability management, threat intelligence, DLP, identity access management, AppSec. It was all over the place. So he really helped me connect a lot of the dots and stuff. And ever since there, I truly understood sort of the power of mentorship and having different mentors who serve different roles in your life. But it's truly a relationship, that you just kind of have to foster and keep it healthy.
And how did you get really passionate and deep on the subject of mentorship? Because obviously we've spoken before and you showed me you have a presentation and you sort of document your experience with mentorship. So why are you so passionate about it, and how do you define mentorship?
Yeah, so I'm passionate about it because it works. It genuinely works. Living proof of it. That mentor I told you about, he sort of mentored me from analyst all the way up to manager. And at one point we were peers. He still mentored me. That says a lot about his character, right? He got me to the point where he was, he obviously took the next step, which I'm super happy for him, but he was an incredible mentor. And I've used a variety of different mentors and a variety of different techniques to gain these mentors. And it was not a research project by any means. Okay. But it could be a cool dissertation. I need to write that down. But it was not a research project by any means, but it was just a series of gaining different relationships and then, relating to a variety of different people. And I realized that Columbus may be underrated, but the InfoSec community is actually really close knit. And if you know people within the Columbus community have good things to say about you, then a lot of people are going to know about you. Right. I saw that very early on, rotating through those companies and hearing the gossip, right? And, experiencing the people as I got to those companies and things like that. So I found that it was very beneficial to have somebody who could guide you through some of those situations so that you don't handle them poorly, right? And you don't burn bridges in the process, and you learn and you grow. To define mentorship, to keep it as simple as possible, it is, like I said, it's a relationship between two individuals, one of which who may admire the other and vice versa for some particular reason. And they're empowering each other to grow to who they would like to be and who they think they would like to be, right? Because some people don't grow to be what they want to be, but this is a person who should be there for you in varying levels, depending on how you all define or don't define the relationship, how things organically grow. And I think the overarching sort of definition is growth, right? The term, I guess, you could use for mentorship relationship is growth. How are you growing in that relationship?
Yeah, an old school concept, but I feel personally, just from my experience, that it's one of those practices that have stood the test of time. It's an underestimated and potentially, I think, underused resource or tactic to grow yourself and grow your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the whole term, it's not what you know, is who you know. In cybersecurity, it is a little different, but I think it's both. I think in order to get a lot of opportunities, get access to a lot of opportunities, it's a lot about who you know. In order to follow through on those opportunities, it's what you know, right? So it's that balance of both. Networking and mentorship is a huge aspect of that.
And there is also this saying that goes, you are who you surround yourself with. So even if you don't necessarily get a mentor, I think just surrounding yourself with smart people and people that you admire, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, well, I think I would encourage people also to use the word mentor or mentorship loosely, right? Like I said, varying levels of mentorship, whether it's one sit down with somebody where you learn something, you never talk to them again, all the way to having a relationship for 10 years, right? As long as you learn something in that process, it can be as temporary or as long as you'd like it to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think this is a great segue to breaking down the different types of mentors as you describe them. Can you walk us through I think it was 3 types and the definition of each one?
Absolutely. And this is purely my opinion of it, right? But this is after those years of sort of gathering different people and their relationships that I had with them. So I'll start with the coaches. I think coaches are normally sort of what the traditional mentor looks like. So from my perspective, a coach is somebody who knows you as best as probably anyone who's not a part of your household can, right? They're a person you go to for professional and personal problems because we know those intersect, especially in the remote world. They're people who give you guidance on all of the above. There are coaches as well that, you admire heavily. They probably admire you as well. And some of those best coaching relationships are when both can learn from each other, right? No matter the generational differences or socioeconomic or racial, all of those are sort of the more healthy ones. A coach can be anybody. Generally, what I like to tell people is have a coach who looks like you, right? Who can sort of pull from their own experience to guide you through things. And then a coach that also does not look like you, right? So that mentor I referenced earlier, he was definitely a coach. He knew about my life. He knew about my professional life, and he did not look like me, but he gave me an opposite, or not, I don't want to say opposite, but a different perspective based on how he was raised, how he was, how he kind of handles situations. And all of it is beneficial. I've always been somebody who takes different opinions and gathers my own on it. So when you have a diverse set of mentors, it's really important to get their insight and sort of make your decision for yourself. The next one is your sponsor. And while sponsors can be kind of tough to obtain, they are some of the people that bring you the most opportunities. Like sponsors are the people who talk about you when you're not in the room. They're people who want to be a part of your journey, who maybe don't know every single inner working thing about your life, but they know your character and they know what you can handle. Some of my greatest opportunities, including my TEDx, was an opportunity that a sponsor brought me, and he put my name forward. And I'll never forget that. And he still continues to sponsor me, became my career coach. He has sort of transitioned into that coaching category, I guess. Right now, he knows a little bit more about me, my personal life, and kind of helps me work through those things. But he's still very much a sponsor in that he thinks about an opportunity. He says, Samara's the one. Go talk to her. Right. Were you going to say something there?
No, I was just thinking you also referred to it as a champion. For some folks, maybe who have sales backgrounds, like you have a champion inside the company that vouches for you. So maybe that's just another term some people might sort of familiarize more with. So yes, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. You can call it whatever you want, right? It's like, it could be an ambassador for you. Yeah, champion is a great term to also use. I use sponsor mainly because of sort of the opportunities and sort of talking about you when you're not there, right? Internal, external, wherever they are in the world, right? They can bring opportunities to you. Lastly would be the board of directors. And these are people that you admire primarily for maybe their leadership skills or their technical skills. They're innovative individuals that you look up to in your space, in your particular industry. And these are the people that you take ideas to, right? So if you have a particular idea, a proposal you have at work and you need outside perspective, those are the people that you go to, in my opinion, right? They're fairly removed from you, but they know their stuff when it comes to the industry and can really help you from a professional, a corporate, especially for me. I use a lot of board of directors from a corporate navigation perspective because it's tough, different companies and sort of the politics involved.
That's interesting. And then sort of going into the how does one go about finding these folks? Perhaps you can walk us through how you would go and search out a coach, a sponsor, board of director.
Yeah. So most of my best mentorship relationships, so people I consider friends as well, happened organically. Some I've actually had a previous mentor who have introduced me to this mentor. That's the best way. That is the hands down the best way to find another mentor is for a person that knows you, knows your industry, knows what you need, maybe recognizes that they don't possess what you need for that time in your growth, right? And they find somebody who does, who knows that space better than they do and can help you sort of navigate that situation. That's hands down the best way. That's some of my best. Literally, I had a mentor who introduced me to my current mentor, and that person is no longer really a mentor to me. I don't want to say I've outgrown them, but there was a point in time where I needed a little bit more expertise or maybe a higher level of leadership, so on and so forth. The other way is like sort of your everyday obvious way, right? Like social media, conferences, meetups, things of that nature. And then super random people I've also sort of just based on being open and out there and on social media and doing speaking engagements, doing podcasts like this and coming across it and listening to a little excerpt that really resonated with them. That's a great way to meet people as well when they reach out to you too and just kind of give you that congratulations. I have actively pursued people as well. I have followed people, whether it be in person, through their conference talks or Twitter, LinkedIn, and I've directly reached out to them. That's also super helpful sometimes. People love talking about their journey. People love being a part of your journey too when they see potential in you. So it's never been hard for me, but I've heard it's been hard for others to get mentors.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about myself even, and for those other introvert types, it doesn't feel natural, comfortable to approach someone and say, hey, will you be my mentor? It feels a bit sort of salesy. So I don't know.
It's like dating too, right? Like you don't just go up to somebody and be like, hey, can I take you to dinner? I mean, some people do and it works for them, but others, it's much more of a slow process.
Yes. But again, I would put those folks into the more extroverted bucket. So maybe you have some tips for introverts. How could they go about asking for a mentor or even sort of just setting things up to get to that ask?
Yeah, absolutely. So the content I did build was sort of the art of asking, right? I think people, like I said, they put a little bit too much pressure on themselves to find some sort of formal relationship called a mentor. I am more extroverted. My wife is not, right? She's definitely an introvert. She kind of feels like anytime she reaches out to somebody, she's bothering them, right? Which isn't the case, but it's just kind of what goes through your head in those circumstances. And talking to her while I'm building this content, because I know that tech is full of people who are more extroverted, full of people who are more introverted, who all need mentors for different reasons. So she talked about having a trusted partner. So it could be a mentor, it could be just a friend, right? You talk to this trusted partner about wanting to know somebody who can help you with X. The best way is to be introduced by that person. So obviously there's some pre-work in building strong and trusting relationships with people where you can ask them, hey, I need help in this arena. Do you know anybody who can help me? But that is sort of what I've seen to be sort of the best way for a more introverted individual to go about obtaining a mentor. Now, that being said, the more extroverted you are, the more relationships you tend to and maybe they're more acquaintances or professional relationships, but they're professional relationships and they're hard to manage, right? So it depends also on what your bandwidth is to help manage these relationships. Are you able to meet with them on a quarterly or monthly basis based on your schedule, right? So maybe your approach to gaining a mentor is solely based on your bandwidth as well, right? So if you want a very sort of targeted mentor or somebody who you can match with, it would be beneficial for anybody, introverted or extroverted, to have a trusted partner introduce them as opposed to just going up and asking anybody, right? I did at the time because I wasn't a leader, just a lowly analyst or whatever. And I had all this free time, no kids and whatnot. So I could keep up with people, but it just depends. Depends on what you have availability for as well.
That's an interesting point. We spoke about social media being a platform to follow people and sort of communicate with them through posts, because if they're busy or you're not sure, you're just testing the waters, it's a great way to learn and feel the person out. But I think it was you who had some reservations.
Skeptical. Yeah. Well, and like I said, I've reached out to people after following them. There is an analytical perspective to it, right? Where you're following posts, you're seeing who's posting on them, right? You're looking at follower counts. You're seeing what they do, whether it's controversial posting or very positive posting, right? Unfortunately, the positive posting generally has less followers than the more controversial, but that's just how things are, right? And I think the point that I had brought up to you is that when we pursue people on social media or use social media as sort of an indirect mentorship, we may not actually be uncovering the person behind the profile. Right. I was talking to a sort of mentee. Well, she is a mentee at this point. She went the formal route, which I'm totally open to. And we were talking about leveraging social media to have that further reach. And I gave her these sort of things to think about because, when you're following a certain person, it takes a little while to identify the authenticity and consistency of their posts versus, right? One thing that I've seen during some, I guess I can call it research, was it's a little easier to find a persona based on consistency, right? If there's a very controversial post that somebody has, and then they go dark for a little bit, that's been a little bit of an indication to me, right? Like they had to decompress from that for whatever reason. And again, this is just my opinion, but somebody being, who they are through and through, truthfully, doesn't generally need to compress in some of these instances, right? They don't need to reset, right? Unless it was a very hurtful argument. I've seen that too. That's horrible. But anyway, I say all that to mean I believe more so in the power of mentorship from a very sort of raw, deep perspective, right? Getting to know the actual person behind, the screen, the profile. And my hesitation would be having a role model that's not actually who they put themselves out there to be. And I'm not judging anyone by any means. I want to say that do your thing, but I do warn people, right? Be careful who you're modeling yourself after. Really get to know them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You alluded to a few things earlier and a few minutes ago. Can we go more in depth on all the benefits of having a mentor?
Yeah, I think there are really obvious ones. There's ones like helps you navigate situations, right? Mentors are sounding boards for different things, ideas, proposals, even even something more in a personal perspective, like relationship advice and things like that. I think and to go on to the relationship advice, I've had a lot of benefit from hearing about different people's lifestyles as well, and sort of how they go about their life. I think there's a lot of power in the personal mentorship, even more so than the professional in some cases, right? Like the career coach I mentioned, he talks about being your best self in situations. And many of those are either parenting or professional. And when you bring your best self to work, that has a lot to do with the personal, right? So we go through a lot of the personal things so I can bring my best self in parenting and professionalism and stuff like that. So that's obviously huge. Somebody knowing you, but then also the feedback, right? True, honest feedback. Somebody who knows you, knows your buttons, knows what you're not good at, and can sort of help guide you through that situation, as well as introspectively looking at yourself and how you are as a mentee, right? And learning how to be a better mentee, how to be a better professional. These mentors might show you something you didn't know you were not so good at, right? And those are the most valuable. It sucks. Okay. Don't get me wrong. At first it can be kind of hurtful, but these are people who are genuinely invested in your career and your growth as a person. So those are the biggest benefits from my perspective. And then having access to their network, right? From a sort of corporate navigation perspective, these mentors should be lifting their mentees up and vice versa. So you have an additional access to a diverse network as part of that as well.
If you think about it, like your immediate family, they're never going to really criticize you. So you're never going to get that opportunity to see yourself as you are, your weaknesses, strengths, without getting that raw feedback. Yes, I agree. It's much more challenging to grow. You have to really rely on yourself to self-assess yourself if there's no one from the outside willing to tell you the honest, brutal truth.
And I don't care who you are, your self-awareness is not to 100%, right? There is certain things about you that only others can see. And from your perspective and how your brain is wired, you are doing the right thing. But there are other perspectives. There are other options.
You mentioned challenges. So can we go through some of the challenges that you've seen, and perhaps you can give us some solutions to overcome those as well?
Wow. So I talked about forced mentorship, and some of these things just plain don't work, right? I think in that situation I was talking about, they used strength finders to pair mentors and mentees. That's awesome. Yes. Cool. In other situations, I've seen just interests. And A lot of different kind of people can have interests for different reasons. That is not a great way to get two people together, right? I would even take a zodiac sign pairing better than just plain interests, right? So there are a lot of challenges that come with a not effective match, right? And not knowing how to pull yourself away from that. There's also these relationships where one person's feeling it and the other person isn't, right? And if there isn't any honest communication going back and forth in terms of what they're getting out of this relationship, then it can burn, it could die, right? And it could end badly, especially when you have a close-knit community like that. Other challenges, obviously, we talked about finding a mentor, getting the right people to be your mentor, people's evolution with time, things that have happened in their lives that maybe they can't be a mentor to you either. And you can't be a jerk about it, right? That's a challenge too. Another challenge, actually a challenge that I've experienced, is having a one-way mentorship relationship. So my best mentors are the ones where they ask me certain things about my perspective too, which make me feel more invested in the relationship, right? Others where they just want to talk about themselves, their journey. They don't really, I'm just asking them questions and gaining what I can from it. That's all fine and good, but I might push them to more of a sponsor or board of director as opposed to a coach and giving my whole self up. So, protecting your own feelings and emotions and being aware of your mentor's emotional intelligence. The other aspect I talked about were mentors that you don't necessarily admire. So, for example, to explain that, I've taken on a couple of very temporary mentors because I did not care for them. And the reason I did that was because I knew I was going to encounter more people like that in my life. And I wanted to build my threshold. Okay. The challenge with that is that you don't like this person, right? So it's mentally and emotionally taxing to force yourself into a sort of a pseudo relationship with somebody to learn from them and to build your threshold. So there has to be an end to it. I am not saying everyone should do that based on their own capacity for these kinds of things, but it really did help me navigate who these people are, right? And why, right? I like to think about the why and why they might be that way. And in the process, I learned a lot about these, unfortunately they were men, but a lot about these men. Actually, there was one woman. And I learned sort of the person behind the mask, the guard that they had up, the reason why they felt like they needed to be a jerk or judgmental at any point, right? And generally a lot is their own sort of trauma that they went through, which is extremely important to understand because everybody is going through something that you don't know, right? And they could be masking it behind anything. So it's important to, really think about and so be socially aware of that as well. So like I said, I don't recommend everyone do it, but it shows you what kind of leader you don't want to be, what kind of professional you don't want to be. See what you have in common as well and really dig into that.
So I have two follow-up questions. So first one, would you say that it makes more sense when you're entering the workforce to strive for a coach first and then start looking for sponsor and board of director mentors? Does that make sense as someone first getting into the workforce?
Well, that's tough. What I'm thinking about is coach versus sponsor, because the sponsor is what's going to get you in more of those opportunities that a coach can help you guide through. I guess you can get lucky and get someone who's both.
Right. That's another interesting point. Like I think you said a coach can turn into a sponsor.
Yeah. And vice versa as well. So let me think. I got into the field and I had that mentor and he really helped me to, get through a lot of different situations and be able to analyze, those same situations and issues and things of that nature. So I'm going to go with a coach first. I think because when you're getting into a new field, you feel kind of lost. And it's important to have somebody who can have your back, right? And sort of remind you of why you're doing it so you can stay the course. Once you are more confident in what you're doing and you're really performing, you have that potential that is starting to be seen from others. You're going to get sponsors, no problem. And those sponsors will start to talk you up. They'll want to be a part of your journey. They'll bring opportunities to you because you make them look good, essentially, right? And you have to continue to make them look good so they can keep talking about you. So I'll go with a coach first. Identify a meaningful relationship with somebody and then start from there.
And then my second follow-up question was, you gave us some examples of bad experiences with your mentors, coaches. What can you suggest to folks that don't have experience with this, what are some red flags that they could look out for that this mentor will not be a good fit for them?
Oh boy. Oh boy. My biggest piece of advice, you got me all excited here because this is one of those things that really bothers me. Okay. People who mentor based on their preference. Okay. So for example, I've had a mentor before and there were some circumstances from a corporate navigation, fantastic. Okay. But then we got into appearance, right? I wear a lot of unisex clothing. I'm very chill. I go comfort before fashion. And when there was feedback on my appearance, I realized, okay, something's not right here, right? So when I started to get some negative feedback as well, and I was like, this is hitting a different part of me. This is now hitting self-esteem as opposed to improvement, professional, personal improvement, right? There's a serious difference between those two things. So if you encounter somebody who is mentoring based on preference, somebody who expects you to take their advice, right? Mentors should be giving advice. They shouldn't expect the mentee to take it, right? They should expect the mentee to make an informed decision based on your advice, right? And then the last thing is listen to your gut. Your gut's telling you the truth. If you have one mentor and you are just not feeling it, you go to zero and start over. Don't let somebody, put you down, damage your self-esteem, make you overthink yourself too much. So you need support. You need uplifting. Everyone needs that.
So follow up to my follow up. I'm just curious, like the judgment on your uniform, the way you dress, and the remark that you made about not having to take your mentor's advice. So on the dress code thing, do you perhaps feel they were maybe coming with good intentions? They didn't know that perhaps you're not client facing or something like that. And second question, if you never take your mentor's advice, wouldn't they feel like they're not being valuable or that you're just not listening? Shouldn't there be that communication like, thanks, but I feel that, blah, blah, blah?
So open communication is always the answer. But to start with your last question in terms of, will the mentor feel like they're not adding value? The mentor should be giving what they can give to that relationship. In my opinion, a mentor to mentee, it should be about the mentee personally, right? Obviously, there are backs and forth. If you know that your mentee has come to you for something in particular, there should be no expectation that they're going to do exactly what you said, because then it's not about them, it's about you and your ego.
But if they feel like that they're trying to help you, but you don't take any of their advice, does that not signal that either you're not serious or that you don't value their opinion? So I guess to rephrase my question, and I think you answered it, I think that open communication is important to explain why you didn't take their advice, at least so they feel like they're not wasting their time. Again, I'm just throwing things out there. Maybe you see it differently.
It's a great question. If there is a pattern, okay, so let me say that. If there is a pattern of you not taking particular advice, then maybe that relationship doesn't work. Sure. I'm saying you shouldn't expect the mentee or whoever you're speaking with to take that advice every single time, right? Again, open communication, of course. And if there's pattern, maybe that relationship should no longer sort of be a thing. Experience is the best teacher. So that mentor needs to stick around for the fallout. If they are truly think that they are 100% correct, then there should be some sort of fallout. If there isn't, their mentor should be able to learn from that situation, right? They took a different avenue. Oh man, that worked. Let me put that in the memory bank.
Yeah, that definitely helps give a bit more sort of tools in the management side of things.
Absolutely. I've done a lot of thinking about it.
And then I want to go back for a second to alternative channels of looking for mentorships or even non-traditional channels. What is your opinion on communities offline and online? How do you see those as mentorship potential or even just a form of, that non-traditional access one-to-many?
So I didn't answer your former question on the appearance, the preference, and good intentions. I am 100% positive that mentee the mentor at the time that was sort of talking to me about my appearance had great intentions. Sure. But I realized that there wasn't enough self-awareness there to understand that this was her trauma speaking, right? She was projecting essentially, right? From my perspective, this is my perspective. She was projecting her experience in tech with wearing certain things to my experience. I've never had an issue with what I've worn outside of this mentor giving me that advice, right? So I would just say from a mentor perspective, be aware of the advice that you're giving. There should be a lot of self-reflection and sort of that advice that maybe you've already given it and you're thinking back and you're like, oh man, that was kind of based on my own preference or some trauma that I experienced that this person may not be experiencing. You need to be aware of how that made that person feel as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
You mentioned other channels like communities and groups. So in my own experience, I have not found mentors based on any community or meetup. It's my most beneficial ones were other mentors, other trusted partners that introduced me to people who they knew this person could benefit my life and vice versa. However, communities, meetups, you are meeting up in your community for a reason, whether it's one central purpose or an interest of some sort, or your industry or LGBT or Black, things like that. So I think there's a wealth of knowledge across the board that you can soak in different perspectives, right? And we talked about mentorship being as temporary as you'd like it to be. So maybe it's one post that really has you thinking, right? And sort of spins into other actions based on that community post, things like that. It's super simple. That's what I'm saying. Mentorship is such a broad term, and that's why I needed to put it in those buckets.
Yeah, it's like sort of don't overthink it, just be sort of outgoing and approachable and provide value to others. And, that can only stand you in good stead.
Yeah, it's a lot of self-reflection. It's a lot of not being a jerk and accepting people for who they are as well and their perspective.
As we wrap up here today, I wanted to finally get to your golden rules of mentorship. I thought that would be a nice way to end out the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And they change all the time. So keep me honest here. But especially, it's not a post-pandemic, it's just a pandemic, right? We're in it. Mentorship is hard. It's okay to recognize that. It's okay to recognize that you are in an emotional state where maybe you can't take a lot of negative feedback. Like, that's okay. Maybe you need a break. That's okay, right? Being able to identify what you're going through and understanding what other people are going through, understanding your workload and understanding your mentor's workload as well. It's ebbs and flows, right? Understanding that you may be rejected, right? And to just keep going. So it's about self-awareness, social awareness, understanding, right? Another sort of golden rule. And, what was the last one I just said? I said workload. Obviously, I'm missing them. Like I said, they change all the time. But really, it's a relationship. And it's about keeping it healthy and getting rid of anything toxic. Yeah, if it doesn't bring you joy, drop it.
No, 100%. And would you say that you could have multiple mentors at one time? Like, does that make sense? You're working with a mentor or mentors on different areas of your professional life? Would you have a mentorship for, leadership and a mentorship for personal growth, or just throwing things out?
No, we talked about bandwidth. We talked about varying levels of mentorship. Maybe somebody you meet with quarterly, monthly, weekly, maybe somebody you text every single day. There are peer mentorships as well, right? Do what you can with what you have while you have it, right? That's kind of that's the golden rule. Maybe I should make that the one golden rule. But based on your bandwidth, see what you can maintain. But the important thing is to maintain it and keep it healthy. I'm not going to say that I've been perfect and I haven't let a mentorship relationship drop, because I definitely have. But there are key people in my life that I keep up with. So it's important, even if you have to write their names down, just to remember who they are, what they can do for you, and vice versa.
Awesome. And I actually thought of one more question. Does it make sense to set key performance indicators or objectives/goals at the start of your mentorship so that both of you feel like, hey, this is what we're working towards, and let's see how much we've accomplished, after 3 months or even after 6 weeks. Does that make sense?
I personally think that would put a lot on the relationship. Unless in your personal life, you have a significant other that you track your progress. I don't see that happening.
Let's
right?
put aside then the metrics or the pressure. Would it make sense to at least set the objective of the mentorship? This is what I want to work on. Can you help me with this? Set some kind of loose plan. Maybe that would be less of a pressure situation.
So I think so. And I think when these things happen organically and you're getting to know your mentor, these things will come up, right? And they'll be sort of, again, a part of your journey. But to be more honest as well, I would say yes from a professional perspective. From a personal, I think that should be purely organic. You bringing things to them, they giving you feedback, and you kind of taking it from there. From a professional perspective, so for example, I had a trusted partner who knew. So I've done a TEDx Columbus presentation, right? And that was huge. The plan is to get to the big TED stage, TED, right? Not TEDx, a subsidy, TED. So she got me in contact with a person whose job is literally to be a keynote speaker. He does it all the time for large audiences. That he knows my goal. I made that up front. Tracking it, I don't believe that will be happening. I think it's just going to be, leveling up and going to bigger talks and that's how we're kind of going to track and, listen to my talks and give me feedback and sort of that mutual beneficial relationship. But it did start with a premise of a goal. And I think that is 100% good. And I think it should be stated early on. Yeah.
Cool.
I think it makes sense.
Thank you so much. So before we wrap up here today, is there anything else you want to add that I didn't ask?
Yeah. So I used to just say, do it, right? It was like a Nike thing. Just do it. But now knowing everything we know about 2020, 2021, now we're in 2022, like do some soul searching, right? Understand who you are and what you need. And if you don't know how to do that, reach out to me. Okay. I've had a lot of soul searching myself. And from there, you can really start to identify what is going to make you the person that you want to be. And from there, you can identify mentors that can help you get there. So to that, I say yes. Say yes to opportunities. Say yes to mentors. Try it out. See if it works. Show up. Okay. Is the next one. Just show up. Okay. This is what I do for myself, my own anxiety and challenges. If I said I was going to do something, I need to show up no matter how I'm sort of feeling in that moment. Because most of the time I'm happy with it, right? I did better than I was expecting. I didn't show up and act a fool. You know what I mean? It's because that was my anxiety speaking, my imposter syndrome speaking before. Obviously, there are much more catastrophic sort of mental issues that maybe just showing up isn't the right time, and that's okay too. And then lastly, don't make life harder than it needs to be. Don't think mentorship is this whole like overarching this king and their subjects. Like it's not a huge thing. Just take it as it comes and be your best self.
That's great advice. And I would maybe just add, just from my experience, like if you are working with a mentor on a project and you sort of have homework or things that you need to accomplish, show that you're serious and do those things. Don't come to your session unprepared or late. And if you're not working on the things that your mentor has advised on, that is wasting their time. So I would just sort of also throw that in there as my 2 cents from mentorship.
Communicate, open communication. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Samara. It was awesome speaking to you today. If anybody wants to connect with you, pick your brain on this topic some more, where's the best place for them to reach you?
Oh, sure. So LinkedIn, I will answer your DM. That's a promise. Samara R. Williams. And I'm also on Twitter at Samara AA Yeah, 3 A's. capital R, W.
Don't worry,
that's my handle.
We'll make sure to add it.
Put it in the notes.
Yes, we'll be adding it to the show notes, so no worries. Thank you so much again for joining us today on Cybersecurity Heroes.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
You're welcome. And to the rest of you, we'll see you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Cybersecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing or following through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.